This happened in one trading session. Silver was slammed from 121 to 95, and gold was punched down from 5,600 to 4,950, right into the month-end close. $26 erased in hours, $650 vaporized. And the part that should stop you cold is this. While the screen price was collapsing, the real-world products started disappearing. If your first instinct is panic, pause. Don't make a decision based on a blinking number when the shelves are empty. What I'm about to lay out is why this is not behaving like a normal market anymore, why the crash narrative is missing the key data point, and why the next move could shock the people who think paper prices are reality. If you're new here, this is where we strip away the surface story and track the plumbing underneath. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next update, because this situation can change fast. And if you want this to reach more people who are staring at charts and missing the bigger picture, hit like, one click, huge impact. Now let's get straight to the contradiction, because contradictions are where the truth leaks out. In a real market, a price crash is supposed to come with one thing: availability. Sellers step in, inventory shows up, discounts unlock supply. That's the basic law of markets. But this week we saw the opposite. Price down, metal gone. Price down, mints pausing. Price down, dealers rationing. Price down, delivery failures starting to surface. Read that again in your head. Cheaper on the screen, harder to buy in the real world. That is not just weird, that is structural stress. That is the pricing mechanism losing contact with the physical object it claims to represent. Here's the framework you need, and most people never learn it until it's too late. There isn't one silver market. There are two markets running in parallel, and they only pretend to be the same. Market one is paper. Futures, swaps, options, unallocated accounts, synthetic exposure, ETFs, digital claims that track silver as a financial product. It trades enormous volume, it moves fast, and it is dominated by institutions whose goal is not to own metal, but to trade volatility, hedge risk, and extract spread. Market 2 is physical. Coins, bars, wholesale blanks, kilo bars, 1,000-ounce bars, vaulted allocated metal, real inventory that must be sourced, refined, shipped, insured, stored. It moves slower. It's constrained by time, logistics, and actual availability. In calm periods, these two markets are loosely connected. The paper price acts like the headline number, and physical premiums float around it. But in stress periods, like now, the connection can snap. And when it snaps, the spot price becomes less like a price and more like a signal. A signal of what paper traders are doing to each other, not what the world is willing to pay for metal. So when you see silver at 95 on a screen, the only question that matters is, can you actually buy it at 95? And right now, in many places, the answer is no. Let's walk through what that looks like, because it's not one isolated issue. It's the same pattern showing up across multiple continents, at the same time, under the same conditions. First, the mints. When a sovereign or major mint pauses sales, that's not a random event. These are businesses designed for throughput. They exist to turn raw metal into standard products. When they pause, it's because demand has jumped beyond capacity, supply is constrained, pricing risk is out of control, or all three. You've got major producers signaling backlog language, allocation language, pause language. Not sale, not clearance, pause, back orders, limited distribution. That is the vocabulary of shortage, not surplus. Second, the dealers. In a healthy market, dealers compete on price and deliver fast. In a stressed market, dealers do something different. They protect inventory. They widen premiums. They slow shipping. They cap quantities. They raise minimums. And in the worst cases, some accept orders, and then can't source the metal to fulfill them on time, triggering cancellations, delays, or outright defaults. Neutral, fair, that's not a comment about any one seller. It's a mechanical reality of supply chains. If you promise delivery on metal you don't actually have in hand, you're effectively selling a future claim. And when the system is tight, future claims break first. Third, the retail gateways. When even mass retailers start putting purchase limits on bullion products, that tells you something simple. The flow is one way. People are not selling them inventory. People are buying whatever arrives. It's a stampede pattern. And while all of that is happening in the physical world, the paper market is doing something that looks totally different. It's printing supply with keystrokes. Because paper can do that. Paper is infinite. A contract can be created in any size, at any moment, as long as there is a willing counterparty and enough margin to post. That's why paper markets can slam price in a way physical markets can't. Physical needs metal. Paper needs only liquidity and leverage. Now we get to the part most people miss. Who is doing the selling, and when? Watch the timing. When does the aggressive dumping hit? Not randomly across the full 24-hour cycle. It clusters in the windows where U.S. trading is active, where liquidity in the dominant paper venues is deepest, and where a flood of selling has maximum impact on the headline price. Then, when those hours pass, the selling pressure often eases, and the price can stabilize or even drift upward as other regions absorb metal and flow continues in physical channels. You don't need a secret document to see this. You can see it in the rhythm. Hammer it open, pressure into the close, calm outside the center of paper liquidity. And the moment you see that rhythm, you have to ask the uncomfortable question. Is this a market clearing process or a positioning process? Because those are different. A clearing process happens when new information changes fundamentals and everyone reprices together. A positioning process happens when big players need a certain close, a certain monthly print, a certain options outcome, a certain flush of leverage, and they use the paper market like a lever to force it. End of month, end of week, big option exposures, large futures positioning. It's the perfect storm for move the number behavior. And if you don't know the game, you get emotionally played by the number. Here's why the end-of-month timing matters. The market doesn't just trade prices, it settles books, it marks portfolios, it triggers margin. It impacts bonuses, it defines risk limits. A violent move into a settlement window can force weak hands to puke positions, can trip stops, can liquidate leveraged longs, and can let stronger hands buy back at lower levels, on paper, while physical demand quietly eats what's available. So yes, the chart can look like fear, but the plumbing can look like hunger. Now let's talk about the most revealing hidden signal, the cost to borrow metal. When a market is well supplied, borrowing physical metal is cheap. Lease rates sit low because lenders are comfortable, inventory is sufficient, and there's no panic premium. But when metal is scarce, holders start charging up for the privilege of access. Borrowing gets expensive. The rate becomes a siren. You don't have to obsess over the exact number to understand the direction. When the cost to borrow spikes, it means someone is bidding for metal now. Not exposure, not price. Metal. That's what stress looks like. Paper price down, borrowing cost up. It's the market screaming that the headline number isn't reflecting the real-time scarcity. Warning, now connect this to the biggest danger for everyday investors, the illusion of ownership. A lot of people think they own silver because they own something labeled silver, a statement, a share, an account balance, a position. But in a stress event, the only ownership that matters is what survives delivery demands. Ask yourself a single clean question. If everyone asked for metal at the same time, what happens to my claim? Hard truth. If your silver is a promise, then you are in line behind the people with stronger rights. Refiners, industrial users, large wholesalers, sovereign mints, and institutions with direct supply contracts. Promises are fine when nobody tests them. Promises fail when everybody tests them. Reframe. This is why a paper-physical split is so important. It's not about being right on the internet. It's about understanding what you actually hold. And right now, the world is testing the system. Let's zoom out because this isn't a one-week story. This is a multi-year pressure build that just had the mask ripped off. For years, silver demand has been running hot against supply. Industrial usage keeps climbing. Electronics, solar, electrification, medical, defense applications, high-end manufacturing. At the same time, mining supply doesn't magically respond overnight. New mines take years to permit, finance, build, and ramp. Ore grades decline, costs rise, political risk shows up in key jurisdictions. And recycling is not a magic tap you can just turn on at will, especially when silver is dispersed across billions of devices in tiny quantities. So you get a system where the buffer is above-ground inventory. Vault stocks, exchange inventories, stored bars, working inventories in the supply chain. That buffer can make everything look fine, until it doesn't. Think of it like a warehouse full of spare parts. You can run a factory even if the supplier is late because the warehouse covers the gap. But if the supplier stays late for years, the warehouse drains. And then one day, a small spike in orders hits, and suddenly the line stops. That's what a breakdown looks like. Not a smooth adjustment, a snap. And what triggers the snap? Sometimes it's a price surge that attracts attention. Sometimes it's a price drop that triggers bargain hunting. Sometimes it's a policy change, an export restriction, a new industrial order flow, or a supply chain bottleneck. But once the snap happens, you start seeing the same symptoms everywhere. Backlogs, allocations, purchase limits, delayed releases, premium explosions, delivery failures, and rising costs to borrow. Now I want you to notice something counterintuitive, because this is where most people get trapped. A paper crash can actually make the physical shortage worse, because lower headline prices don't reduce real-world demand in a tight market. They accelerate it. They look like a discount. They trigger opportunistic buying. They trigger, "I missed the run, here's my chance," thinking. They pull future demand into the present. So the more the paper price gets smashed, the more aggressively the physical market can get drained, especially if the public believes the smash is real. This is why a paper dump can function like a vacuum. It doesn't just move a chart, it pulls metal out of the system. And once metal leaves, it doesn't come back easily. It goes into private hands, long-term storage, industrial pipelines, or sovereign channels that don't flip it back to the market just because the screen moved. That's why these moments matter. They are wealth transfers. The emotional person sees red candles and sells. The patient person sees a disconnect and accumulates. And if you're wondering which side usually wins, look at where the metal flows. Here's the real chessboard. The West tends to set the paper price because it has the biggest paper venues and the most leveraged trading. But the East and industrial buyers tend to set the physical reality because they take delivery, they build inventory, and they treat metal as strategic input, not a speculative toy. So when you see a week where the US hours are heavy selling and other regions are heavy taking, you're watching two different philosophies collide. One treats silver like a number. The other treats silver like a necessity. And necessity always has the last word. Now you might be thinking, okay, so what happens next? Good. That's the only question that matters. And the answer depends on which side breaks first. Scenario 1. The paper price catches up to physical reality. That means the headline number rises sharply, premiums stabilize, and the market tries to reconnect. This can happen through short covering, through delivery stress, through arbitrage pressure, or through a sudden wave of industrial buying that refuses to accept paper settlement. Scenario 2. The physical market fractures further. That means products vanish, premiums blow out, rationing becomes normal, and a two-tier price becomes permanent. One number for paper, another for metal you can actually touch. Scenario 3. Policymakers step in indirectly. That can look like export restrictions, strategic stockpiling, industrial prioritization, or regulatory pressure that redirects flow away from retail and toward industry. In that world, it's not just a price issue, it's an allocation issue. You don't need to pick the exact scenario today. You need to understand the risk map. Because the risk isn't volatility. The risk is believing you can exit or enter at the screen price during a physical squeeze. So what should you do right now? First, don't confuse a paper print with a physical reality. If you own physical silver, the screen price is not your liquidation price in a stressed market. Your real price is what a buyer will pay for metal, delivered, now. And in a tight market, that can be dramatically higher than spot. If you don't believe that, try to replace what you have. Try to buy the same amount you're thinking of selling. The spread between sell and replace is the truth. Second, if your exposure is paper-based, be honest with yourself about counterparty and settlement risk. I'm not telling you what to own. I'm telling you to know what you own. If you're holding a promise, understand the conditions under which promises get rewritten. Third, if you're looking to buy, realize that the opportunity is not simply spot is lower. The opportunity is metal is available. Availability is the real asset in a shortage. Premiums are the cost of urgency. If you can source metal at a premium that still makes sense for your strategy, you're not buying a number, you're buying access. And now I want to say something that will make some people angry, but it needs to be said. A lot of mainstream commentary will call this conspiracy, because that's the easiest way to dismiss uncomfortable market structure. But you don't have to believe in a grand plan to recognize a mechanical fact. Paper can be created instantly. Metal cannot. When paper sets the price and physical is scarce, distortions are guaranteed. That's not ideology, that's physics. And here's the cliffhanger that should keep you watching markets differently from now on. If the paper market can dump price this hard while the physical market is this tight, what happens when the paper market needs to buy back? Because that is the moment that changes everything. Selling is easy when you can create supply. Buying is painful when the supply is gone. If a big paper short needs to cover into a physical drain, the market doesn't move in a straight line. It snaps, it gaps, it runs through levels that shouldn't happen. And it does it fast, because liquidity disappears the moment fear flips sides. That's why the most dangerous assumption you can make right now is that this crash is the end. End-of-week dumps often look final, until they reverse in a way that makes everyone feel stupid for reacting. So here are 2 questions I want you to answer in the comments. Do you trust the paper price, or do you trust the empty shelves? And if you could only choose one form of exposure, physical in hand or a paper claim, what would you pick and why? Drop your answer. I read the comments and your responses help shape what I cover next. Now let me leave you with the simplest summary of what just happened, because simplicity is power. They dumped the paper price into month end. Physical demand did not blink. Supply tightened. Borrowing costs signaled stress. Inventory gateways started rationing, and the disconnect widened. That is not what a healthy market does. A healthy market clears. This market performs. And when a market performs, your job is not to react to the performance. Your job is to understand the mechanism behind it. So here's my final message. Don't let a forced number print talk you out of the thing the world is struggling to source. Don't let volatility rent space in your head. If you're making decisions based on fear, you're playing someone else's game. Subscribe so you don't miss the next update, because the next move usually comes when everyone thinks the story is over. And if you want a deeper breakdown of the paper versus physical split and how to spot the pressure points before they hit the chart, tell me in the comments and I'll build that video next. Because one way or another, this resolves. Paper and metal don't stay divorced forever. And when they reconnect, it won't be polite.